Tonight, dear friend, allow your thoughts to grow quiet. Allow the noise of the day to drift away like mist dissolving beneath the first light of dawn. There is nowhere you need to go. Nothing you need to solve. Nothing you need to become. For now, simply listen. Listen to a story that was told long before kingdoms rose and fell, long before roads crossed mountains and cities filled the valleys. A story from an age when forests stretched endlessly across the world, when rivers sang their ancient songs without interruption, and when wisdom sometimes appeared in forms that few would expect. Tonight, we journey to the foothills of the mighty Himalayas. Far beyond the lands of merchants and kings. Far beyond the reach of human ambition. There stood a vast wilderness untouched by greed. Ancient cedar trees reached toward the stars. Snow-covered peaks glowed silver beneath the moon. Crystal streams wound gently through emerald valleys. The air itself seemed sacred. Every breath carried the fragrance of pine, wildflowers, and clean mountain water. In this hidden world, life moved slowly. The wind whispered through branches. Leaves danced softly upon the forest floor. Birds greeted the sunrise with songs older than memory. At night, countless stars appeared overhead like lamps suspended in an endless ocean of darkness. Everything seemed peaceful. Yet the forest was not empty. Among its meadows, rivers, and hidden glades lived a great nation. Not a nation of humans. A nation of deer. 80,000 deer wandered freely throughout the valleys and mountains. Young fawns played beside sparkling streams. Mothers watched over their families beneath flowering trees. Strong stags guarded the herds. Each season arrived gently. Each day unfolded peacefully, and above them all stood their king. A king unlike any creature the world had ever seen. His name was Harita, the golden deer king. His body shimmered like sunlight upon still water. Every strand of his fur seemed woven from liquid gold. His antlers shone with the brilliance of polished silver. His hooves gleamed like moonlit crystal. His eyes held a softness that comforted the frightened and a wisdom that humbled the proud. Many who saw him believed they were looking upon a spirit rather than a living creature. Yet his greatness did not come from his appearance. It came from his heart, for Harita loved every deer under his protection. He knew the valleys where the youngest fawns played. He remembered the oldest deer in the herd. He listened patiently to disputes. He protected the weak. He guided the lost. And whenever fear entered the forest, he was always the first to face it. Because true leadership is not measured by power. It is measured by responsibility. Harita understood this deeply. Every morning before sunrise, while much of the forest still slept beneath blankets of mist, the golden deer king would climb a rocky ridge overlooking the valleys. From there he watched his kingdom awaken. He watched mothers lead their young toward fresh grass. He watched birds glide between ancient trees. He watched sunlight slowly paint the mountains gold. These quiet moments filled him with gratitude. For although life was fragile, it was also precious. Every creature desired happiness. Every creature feared suffering. Whether bird or deer, king or servant, all hearts sought peace. The golden deer king understood this truth better than anyone. And because he understood it, compassion flowed naturally from him like water from a spring. One evening, as the sky faded into deep shades of violet and blue, Harita stood alone beside a mountain stream. The water moved gently around smooth stones. Stars began appearing overhead. A cool breeze drifted through the valley. The forest was settling into sleep. Most creatures welcomed the night. But Harita often used these quiet hours for reflection. He gazed into the flowing water. The surface reflected the moon. For a moment, his golden face appeared beside the pale circle of light. Then the current carried the reflection away. Harita smiled softly. Nothing remains forever, he thought. The moon changes. The seasons change. The river never holds the same water twice. Even kings cannot escape change. Yet kindness can remain. Compassion can remain. Wisdom can remain. Long after wealth and power have disappeared. The thought brought him peace. For many years, his kingdom had known safety. Predators rarely entered these protected valleys. Food was abundant. The herds flourished. Young deer grew strong. Old deer lived long lives. It seemed as though the forest itself had blessed them. But even in the most peaceful places, unseen changes sometimes begin beyond the horizon, far away. Beyond the mountains. Beyond the forests. Beyond the winding rivers. Another king ruled another kingdom. And unlike Harita, that king found joy in very different things. While the golden deer king spent his mornings protecting life, the human king spent his days taking it. While one ruler cherished peace, the other delighted in the thrill of pursuit. The paths of these two kings had not yet crossed. But destiny was already moving quietly through the world. Like a distant storm hidden beyond the mountains. Like a ripple traveling across a vast lake. Like a single falling leaf beginning a journey toward the sea. The peaceful kingdom of the deer did not yet know what was coming. The mothers slept peacefully beside their young. The streams continued their songs. The stars continued their silent journey across the heavens. And the golden deer king stood beneath the moonlight, watching over them all. Unaware that the greatest test of his compassion was drawing nearer with every passing day. A test that would one day change not only his own life, but the heart of a king, the fate of a kingdom. and the future of countless living beings. For now, however, the forest remained silent. The night remained gentle. And beneath the watchful stars, 80,000 deer rested peacefully in the care of their golden king. As the seasons passed over the Himalayan valleys, life continued in its gentle rhythm. Morning mists rose from the rivers. Golden sunlight touched the snowy peaks. The great forests breathed quietly beneath the endless sky. And each day, the golden deer king watched over his people with the same calm devotion. To those who lived beneath his protection, it seemed that peace would last forever. But beyond the mountains, beyond the forests, beyond the winding rivers that carried snowmelt toward distant lands, another world existed. A world of stone walls and palace towers. A world of markets and soldiers. A world ruled by human desires. There, in the ancient city of Benares, a king sat upon a magnificent throne. His name has long been forgotten by history. But the choices he made would be remembered for generations. The king possessed everything most people dream of having. He had wealth beyond counting. Jewels filled his treasury. Servants attended his every need. Musicians played in his halls. Dancers entertained him each evening. His armies protected vast territories. His commands were obeyed without question. Yet despite having everything, he was not content. For there is a strange hunger that sometimes grows inside the human heart. It cannot be satisfied by gold. It cannot be satisfied by power. It cannot be satisfied by comfort. The more it receives, the more it wants. The king did not understand this. Whenever boredom appeared, he sought excitement. Whenever restlessness arose, he searched for distraction. Whenever emptiness touched his heart, he tried to fill it with activity. And of all his pleasures, none delighted him more than hunting. At first, he hunted only occasionally, a few days each month. Then every week. Then several times each week. Eventually, scarcely a day passed without a hunt. Before dawn, horns would sound throughout the palace grounds. Soldiers prepared their weapons. Horses were saddled. Servants gathered provisions. The king himself would emerge dressed in fine hunting garments, eager for the day's pursuit. His eyes brightened whenever he imagined the chase. The pounding hooves. The shouting hunters. the frightened animals fleeing through the forest. To him, it felt thrilling, alive, exciting. Yet what felt like entertainment to one being often became suffering for another. This is a truth the king had never paused to consider. And so each morning, long lines of people followed him into the wilderness. Not because they wished to, because they had no choice. Farmers left their fields. Workers left their duties. Young men abandoned their tasks. Old men struggled to keep pace. The king's hunting expeditions required thousands of participants. Entire villages were disrupted. Families waited anxiously for their return. The forests echoed with noise and confusion. What began as one man's amusement became a burden carried by countless others. Still, no one dared complain. For kings hold great power, and people often fear speaking truth to power. Meanwhile, the animals suffered most of all. The hunters spread across vast areas of wilderness. They beat drums. They shouted loudly. They waved torches. They drove animals toward waiting archers. Panic swept through the forests whenever the royal hunts began. Birds abandoned their nests. Wild boars fled through thick undergrowth. Monkeys leaped desperately from tree to tree. And the deer suffered terribly. Terrified herds scattered in every direction. Fawns became separated from their mothers. Young deer stumbled into ravines. Old deer exhausted themselves trying to escape. Some died from arrows. Others died from fear. Others were trampled during the chaos. Many escaped the hunters only to perish later from injuries. The forest grew increasingly silent. Places once filled with life became empty. Animals learned to fear every unfamiliar sound. Even the wind moving through branches could make them tremble. Far away in the Himalayan valleys, rumors of these hunts slowly spread among wandering creatures. Migrating birds carried stories. Traveling animals brought news. Each tale seemed worse than the last. At first, the deer of Harita's kingdom listened with concern. Then with fear. Then with growing unease. One evening, several older stags approached the golden deer king. The sun was setting. Amber light lingered upon the mountain peaks. The valley below glowed softly beneath a blanket of gathering shadows. Harita stood beside a stream when the deer arrived. They lowered their heads respectfully. "My king," one of them said quietly, "we have heard troubling news." Harita listened. The old stag spoke of the human king. The endless hunts. The destruction. The suffering. The fear spreading throughout neighboring forests. As the story unfolded, silence settled over the group. The stream continued its gentle song. The evening breeze stirred the grass. but none of the deer spoke. At last, Harita lifted his gaze toward the distant horizon. Beyond those mountains lay lands he had never seen. Yet he could almost feel the fear that had taken root there. His heart grew heavy, not because he feared for himself, but because he understood suffering. Whenever any creature experienced pain, a compassionate heart naturally responded. That was the way of wisdom. That was the way of kindness. For several moments, the golden deer king remained silent. Then he spoke softly. Fear often travels faster than danger. The deer listened carefully. But fear should never be ignored. The king's eyes reflected the fading light of sunset. If these stories are true, we must remain vigilant. The others nodded. Yet deep inside, Harita sensed something he could not fully explain, like a distant echo. Like approaching footsteps heard through a forest at night. The world was changing. The peaceful rhythm of their lives would not continue forever. And though he did not yet know how, he felt that his people would soon face a challenge unlike any they had known before. That night, long after the other deer had fallen asleep, Harita remained awake. Moonlight filtered through the trees. Silver light touched the valley floor. The stars seemed especially bright. The forest appeared peaceful. Perfectly peaceful. Yet beneath that calm surface, uncertainty had begun to stir. Harita closed his eyes. He listened to the wind. He listened to the water. He listened to the quiet breathing of the countless deer sleeping beneath his protection. 80,000 lives. 80,000 hearts. 80,000 beings who trusted him. The weight of that responsibility rested gently upon his shoulders. Not as a burden, but as a sacred duty. A true leader does not ask how many serve him. A true leader asks how many he can serve. The golden deer king understood this deeply, and as he gazed toward the distant horizon beneath the moonlit sky, he silently vowed that whatever dangers might come, he would face them first. Before the mothers. Before the fawns. Before the old and the weak. Before anyone else. For that is the promise compassion makes. And though he could not yet see it, destiny was already drawing closer. With every sunrise. With every passing day. With every hunt ordered by the king of Benares. The path toward sacrifice had begun. Several weeks passed. The moon grew full, then faded. Morning frost appeared upon the grasses and disappeared again beneath the warmth of the sun. Life in the mountain valleys continued much as it always had. The young fawns played beside the streams. The elders rested beneath ancient cedar trees. Birdsong greeted each dawn. The forests breathed peacefully beneath the endless sky. Yet beyond the mountains, something was changing. The king of Benares had become increasingly dissatisfied. The nearby forests no longer provided the excitement he sought. The animals had grown scarce. Many had fled deeper into the wilderness. Others had already perished beneath the endless pressure of the royal hunts. Each new expedition required greater effort. Longer journeys. Larger hunting parties. More people. More noise. More disturbance. Still, the king's hunger for the chase remained unsatisfied. One morning, as sunlight poured through the palace windows, a hunter approached the throne. He knelt respectfully before the king. "My lord," he said, "far beyond the northern forests, near the foothills of the great snow mountains, there are reports of enormous deer herds." The king immediately leaned forward. His eyes brightened. "How enormous?" The hunter hesitated. "Some travelers claim there are tens of thousands." The king smiled. A smile born not from kindness, but from excitement. "A hunt worthy of a king," he whispered. Within days, preparations began. Messengers rode across the kingdom. Soldiers gathered. Servants packed supplies. Archers sharpened arrows. Horses were prepared for a long journey. Thousands of people were ordered to participate. And so, like a great wave rolling toward a distant shore, the hunting expedition began moving north, toward the sacred valleys, toward the kingdom of the golden deer king, toward a destiny none of them yet understood. Far away, beneath the shadow of the Himalayas, Harita felt an uneasiness he could not explain. The morning sky was clear. The streams flowed gently. The forest remained beautiful. Yet something felt different. The birds were quieter. The wind carried unfamiliar scents. Even the deer seemed unusually restless. That evening, Harita climbed his favorite ridge overlooking the valleys. The sun was setting. Golden light stretched across the mountains. Clouds drifted slowly above distant peaks. The beauty of the world seemed endless. And yet, as he gazed toward the southern horizon, he noticed something strange. A faint haze, barely visible, far beyond the forests. At first he thought it was mist. But the haze remained even as darkness approached. A subtle gray veil rising into the sky. Smoke. Harita's heart grew still. He watched silently. The smoke was too distant to understand clearly. Yet deep within, he sensed that the stories he had heard were no longer merely stories. The hunters were coming. The next morning confirmed his fears. Shortly after sunrise, a flock of exhausted birds arrived from the south. They landed among the trees, panting from their long flight. One old crane immediately sought out the golden deer king. Harita listened quietly as the bird spoke. The human king approaches. The words settled heavily in the morning air. Thousands of people march with him. The crane lowered its head. They are less than 3 days away. Silence followed. Around them, the forest remained beautiful. Sunlight filtered through branches. A stream murmured nearby. Wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze. Nature seemed unaware of the danger approaching. But every creature listening understood. Fear began spreading through the valley. At first, it moved quietly. A whispered conversation. A worried glance. A restless night. Then it grew. The younger deer became anxious. Mothers stayed close to their fawns. The older deer remembered stories from neighboring forests. Stories of panic. Stories of suffering. Stories of death. Some suggested fleeing immediately. Others argued that the mountains could hide them. Still others believed the danger might pass. Everyone looked toward Harita. Their king, their protector. The one whose wisdom had guided them for many years. That evening, thousands of deer gathered beneath the stars. The moon hung low above the mountains. Silver light covered the valley like a blanket. The air was cool and still. Harita stood upon a rocky rise where all could see him. For a long time, he said nothing. He simply looked upon the faces around him. Mothers holding their young close. Old deer standing quietly. Young stags struggling to hide their fear. 80,000 lives. 80,000 beings hoping for reassurance. Finally, the golden deer king spoke. His voice was calm. Steady. Like water flowing over smooth stones. My friends, he said gently. A great silence settled across the valley. I know you are afraid. No one denied it. Fear hung openly among them. Visible as moonlight. Visible as breath in cold air. Harita nodded. There is no shame in fear. Many lifted their heads. We fear because life is precious. The deer listened carefully. We fear because we love. The words seemed to soften the tension. A mother deer closed her eyes. An old stag lowered his head thoughtfully. Harita continued. Fear itself is not our enemy. He gazed across the countless faces before him. Our true enemy is panic. the valley remains silent. When panic takes hold, wisdom disappears. When wisdom disappears, suffering multiplies. The golden deer king paused. The mountains stood silently behind him. Ancient, patient, watching. If danger comes, we will face it together. His voice remained gentle, yet strength flowed through every word. No fawn will be abandoned. No elder will be forgotten. No life will be treated as unimportant. Many felt tears gathering in their eyes, because they knew he meant every word. Harita had never asked others to carry a burden he would not carry himself. That was why they trusted him. That was why they loved him. That was why they followed him. The gathering continued late into the night. Questions were asked. Concerns were shared. Plans were discussed. And throughout it all, Harita remained patient. Listening. Comforting. Guiding. As the moon climbed higher into the heavens, the deer slowly returned to their resting places. The valley grew quiet once more. One by one, the stars reflected in the streams. One by one, the sounds of the forest softened. Eventually, only Harita remained awake. He stood alone beneath the moonlight, looking south, looking toward the unseen roads, toward the approaching army of hunters, toward the challenge that would soon test every principle he held dear. Compassion is easy when circumstances are kind. Wisdom is easy when life is peaceful. But true compassion reveals itself during suffering. True wisdom reveals itself during hardship. The golden deer king understood this. And though uncertainty lay ahead, he felt no anger toward the human king. No hatred. No desire for revenge. Only sadness. Because those who cause suffering are often suffering themselves. The king of Benares hunted endlessly because he could not find peace within his own heart. And perhaps, Harita thought, that was the greatest tragedy of all. The wind moved softly through the trees. The stars continued their silent journey. Far away, torches burned along distant roads. Thousands of hunters marched steadily northward. And somewhere beyond the darkness, destiny waited patiently. Soon the sacred forest would hear the sound of drums. Soon the valleys would echo with fear. Soon the golden deer king would face the first great test of his compassion. But tonight, for one final night, the kingdom beneath the snow mountains slept in peace. The morning arrived quietly. At first, it seemed no different from countless mornings that had come before. Mist drifted above the rivers. The snow-covered peaks glowed softly beneath the first light of dawn. Birds greeted the sunrise with their familiar songs. The forest appeared calm, peaceful, whole. Yet beneath that peaceful surface, something had changed. The golden deer king felt it the moment he opened his eyes. The air itself seemed different. Heavy. Waiting. As though the mountains were holding their breath. Harita rose from his resting place and climbed toward a ridge overlooking the southern valleys. The eastern sky was beginning to brighten. Golden light slowly spilled across the world. For a few moments, everything appeared beautiful. Then he saw them. Far in the distance. Tiny moving shapes. At first they resembled ants crossing the landscape. But as the sunlight strengthened, their true form became clear. Thousands of people. Thousands. A river of humanity flowing toward the mountains. Spears glinted in the morning light. Banners fluttered in the wind. Horses moved among long lines of soldiers and servants. And rising above them all was a cloud of dust stretching across the horizon. The hunters had arrived. Harita remained still. He watched silently. Not because he was afraid for himself, but because he understood what would happen next. Once fear entered the forest, chaos would follow. And chaos always demanded a price. The golden deer king closed his eyes briefly. A cool breeze brushed against his face. The scent of pine trees filled the air. The distant call of a mountain bird echoed through the valley. For a moment, he allowed himself to absorb the beauty around him. Perhaps, he thought, the world appears most precious when we realize it may soon change. Then he opened his eyes and began descending toward the valley. The deer needed him. Before long, the news spread. The hunters had reached the foothills. The king's army was establishing camps. Large groups were already entering nearby forests. Fear moved swiftly through the herds. Much faster than the hunters themselves. Mothers gathered their fawns. Young deer looked anxiously toward the south. Old deer exchanged worried glances. Even the birds seemed uneasy. The forest that had once felt safe now felt fragile. Harita spent the morning moving among his people. He spoke gently with the frightened. He reassured the young. He encouraged the elders. Wherever he appeared, panic softened. Not because he offered false promises, but because his presence itself inspired trust. True leaders do not eliminate fear. They help others face it. The sun climbed higher. The morning passed. Then came the sound. At first it was faint. A distant echo. barely noticeable. Then it grew louder. Boom, boom, boom. Drums. The hunting drums. Their rhythm rolled through the valleys like distant thunder. Birds exploded from the treetops. Small animals rushed into hiding. The deer froze, listening. The drums continued. Boom, boom, boom. Now other sounds joined them. Human voices. Shouting. Whistles. The crack of branches. The pounding of many feet. The hunt had begun. Harita's heart tightened. Not from fear. From sorrow. He had heard stories. Now he was witnessing the reality. The noise spread rapidly across the forest. Closer. 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 The first deer began running. Then others followed. Soon entire sections of the herd were moving. Instinct took control. When one deer runs, others run. When panic spreads, reason struggles to survive. Harita immediately moved among them. Stay together, he called. Remain calm. Some listened. Many tried. But fear is powerful, particularly when death seems near. The drums grew louder. The shouting intensified. Then came the first screams. A terrified doe stumbled while crossing a rocky slope. A young stag crashed through dense brush and injured his leg. Several fawns became separated from their mothers. The forest erupted into confusion. Everywhere, deer raced through the trees. Dust filled the air. Branches snapped. Birds fled. Animals scattered. The peaceful valley transformed into a scene of chaos. Harita moved tirelessly, guiding, helping, protecting. Whenever he saw a frightened fawn, he directed it toward safety. Whenever he found injured deer, he assisted them. Whenever panic threatened to overwhelm the herd, he stood firm. Yet even he could not be everywhere. The hunters continued advancing. Thousands of people spread across the forests. Their goal was simple. Drive every animal forward. Leave no escape. Create confusion. Create exhaustion. Create opportunities to kill. The strategy was effective. Cruelly effective. By midday, the suffering had become impossible to ignore. Harita witnessed things that broke his heart. A young fawn calling desperately for its mother. An elderly stag collapsing from exhaustion. A wounded deer dragging itself through the undergrowth. Animals trampling one another in their desperation to escape. And all of it unnecessary. None of these creatures wished harm upon anyone. None threatened the kingdom. None sought conflict. They merely wanted to live, to drink from the streams, to graze beneath the trees, to watch their young grow. The same simple desires found in every living being. The same desires found even in humans. As the afternoon wore on, the hunters pushed deeper into the valleys. The scale of the disaster became clear. This was not an ordinary hunt. This was destruction. Entire herds were being driven relentlessly from one place to another. No creature could rest. No creature could recover. The fear itself was becoming deadly. Harita climbed a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley. From there he saw everything. Thousands upon thousands of deer moving in confusion. Hunters spreading across the landscape. Dust clouds rising into the sky. The once peaceful kingdom transformed into turmoil. The sight pierced his heart. For a long moment, he stood perfectly still. The wind moved through his golden fur. The mountains watched silently. The sky stretched endlessly overhead. And within that moment, something changed. Not outside. Inside. A realization. A truth becoming impossible to avoid. If nothing changed, his people would continue suffering. Day after day. Month after month. Year after year. The hunters would return again and again. The fear would never end. The deaths would continue. The young would grow up knowing only terror. The old would die exhausted and broken. The kingdom he loved would slowly disappear. Harita lowered his head. His eyes filled with sorrow. Yet beneath that sorrow, another feeling began to emerge. Determination. Compassion was not merely feeling sad for suffering. Compassion required action. Real compassion demanded courage. Sometimes great courage. The golden deer king remained on the rocky ridge until evening. The hunters eventually withdrew to their camps. The drums grew silent. The shouting faded. Darkness returned. But the peace did not return. Not completely. Too many hearts were wounded. Too many lives had been shattered. That night, the valley felt different. The stars still appeared overhead. The stream still flowed. The mountains remained unchanged. Yet grief lingered among the herds. Mothers searched for missing young. Friends searched for missing companions. Many wept quietly. Many could not sleep. Harita walked alone through the darkness. Listening. Observing. Sharing the suffering of his people. Near midnight, he reached a hill overlooking the valley. The moon shone brightly above. Silver light covered the world. The beauty of the night seemed almost unbearable. Because beauty and suffering often exist side by side. The golden deer king gazed toward the distant south, toward the campfires of the human king. Tiny points of orange light flickered in the darkness. For a long time, he watched them. Then a thought arose within his heart. Simple, clear, unavoidable. Perhaps the suffering would not end by running. Perhaps it would not end through resistance. Perhaps it would not end through fear. Perhaps the only way to save his people was to speak directly to the king himself. And beneath the moonlit sky, while the valley slept uneasily around him, the first outline of a great sacrifice began to take shape within the heart of the golden deer king. The night was quiet. Yet within the heart of the golden deer king, a decision had already been made. The moon hung high above the mountains. Silver light covered the valleys. The wounded rested. The frightened slept uneasily. The streams continued their endless song through the darkness. Harita stood alone upon the hillside, looking over the kingdom he loved. 80,000 deer, 80,000 lives, 80,000 reasons to act. He understood the danger before him. The human king was powerful. Kings were surrounded by soldiers, protected by walls, shielded by authority. Many feared approaching them. Many feared speaking honestly in their presence. But compassion asks a different question. Not, what might happen to me? But, what happens to others if I do nothing? As the night deepened, Harita remained beneath the stars, listening, reflecting. The cold mountain wind moved softly through his golden fur. Far above, the constellations drifted slowly across the heavens. Ancient stars, silent witnesses to countless lives, countless sorrows, countless acts of courage. The golden deer king felt strangely peaceful. Not because the situation was easy, because his path had become clear. And when one's purpose becomes clear, fear often loses much of its power. Eventually dawn began to approach. The eastern horizon softened. Dark blue gave way to violet. Violet slowly became gold. A new day was arriving. Perhaps the most important day of Harita's life. Before sunrise, he gathered the elders of the herd. They met beneath a grove of ancient cedar trees. Mist drifted gently among the trunks. The air smelled of earth and pine. Many of the deer looked tired. The previous day's suffering remained visible in their eyes. Harita spoke calmly. "My friends." The others listened closely. "I am going to the city of Benares." Several deer immediately raised their heads. Shock spread through the gathering. "The city?" one elder asked. "The human king's city?" Harita nodded. "I will speak with him." Silence followed. Not because they disagreed. Because they understood the risk. One elderly doe stepped forward. "My king," she said softly. "The hunters may kill you before you reach him." Another added, "And even if you reach the palace, why would a human king listen to a deer?" Others voiced similar concerns. The questions were reasonable. The dangers were real. Harita listened patiently. Then he smiled gently. Perhaps he will not listen. The deer stared at him. Perhaps he will. The golden deer king looked toward the brightening horizon. None of us can control another person's heart. The morning breeze stirred the trees. But we can choose how we meet them. The word settled deeply among those gathered. Harita continued. "If I remain here, the suffering will continue." No one argued. They had all witnessed it. "If there is even a small chance to prevent more suffering, I must try." The elder deer lowered their heads. They understood. Because true compassion often walks toward danger while others run from it. As the first rays of sunlight touched the mountains, the farewell began. News spread quickly throughout the valley. The golden deer king was leaving. The golden deer king was going to face the human king. Soon deer gathered from every direction. Mothers, fawns, elders, young stags. Thousands stood quietly among the trees, watching. Many were afraid they would never see him again. Harita moved among them one final time. He offered words of comfort, words of encouragement, words of peace. To one frightened fawn he said, "Be brave." To an elderly stag he said, "Continue caring for the herd." To a grieving mother he said, "Hope is stronger than fear." Simple words. yet spoken with such sincerity that they eased many troubled hearts. Eventually the moment arrived. The sun climbed higher above the mountains. Golden light filled the valley. Harita turned toward the south, toward Benares, toward uncertainty, toward destiny. The deer watched silently as their king began walking away. No guards accompanied him. No soldiers marched beside him. No weapons protected him. Only courage. Only compassion. Only truth. The journey lasted many days. Harita crossed forests he had never seen before. He followed winding rivers through broad valleys. He climbed rocky hills. He passed fields where farmers worked beneath the sun. Along the way, many humans saw him, and many stopped in amazement. Never before had they seen such a creature. His golden fur shimmered like sunlight. His silver antlers gleamed like sacred metal. His eyes reflected remarkable calm. Some believed he was a forest spirit. Others believed he was a divine messenger. Many simply stood in silence as he passed. Harita continued onward, never hurrying, never hesitating. Whenever he stopped beside a stream, he reflected quietly. Whenever he rested beneath a tree, he contemplated the nature of suffering. Again and again, his thoughts returned to the same truth. Every being seeks happiness. Every being fears pain. Humans, animals, kings, servants. The differences between them were often smaller than they imagined. The real challenge was remembering this truth. One evening, as the sun was setting, Harita reached a hill overlooking the great city of Benares. For the first time, he saw it. Massive walls surrounded the city. Palaces rose above the rooftops. Temple spires reached toward the sky. Smoke drifted from countless homes. Roads stretched outward like rivers of stone. The city seemed enormous. Alive. Busy. Complicated. A world entirely different from the peaceful mountain valleys. Harita stood quietly, watching, listening. Far below, human life continued in endless motion. Merchants traded goods. Children played in narrow streets. Workers hurried about their tasks. Soldiers guarded the gates. Everyone seemed occupied. Everyone seemed busy. Yet Harita wondered how many had truly found peace. The thought stayed with him as darkness approached. That night he rested beneath a banyan tree outside the city. The stars appeared overhead, much fainter than in the mountains. The sounds of the city continued long after sunset. Voices, footsteps, music, laughter, arguments. 1,000 different lives unfolding at once. Harita listened peacefully. Tomorrow he would enter the city. Tomorrow he would stand before the king. Tomorrow he would attempt something few would believe possible. One deer speaking to a ruler. One compassionate heart confronting a kingdom built upon habit and violence. The task seemed impossible. Yet Harita felt no despair. Because throughout history, great changes have often begun with a single act of courage. A single voice. A single step. A single decision. The moon rose higher. The city gradually grew quieter. And beneath the ancient banyan tree, the golden deer king closed his eyes. Not knowing whether he would live or die. Not knowing whether he would succeed or fail. Knowing only that compassion had led him here. And that compassion would guide whatever came next. When dawn arrived, he would walk through the gates of Benares. And the fate of 80,000 deer would rest upon the conversation that followed. Before dawn, the city of Benares still slept beneath a veil of darkness. The streets were quiet. The markets empty. The palace lanterns flickered softly in the cool morning air. Above the city walls, the last stars lingered in the fading night. Beneath an ancient banyan tree outside the city, the golden deer king slowly opened his eyes. For a few moments, he remained still, listening. A distant temple bell echoed through the darkness. Somewhere nearby, a bird greeted the approaching dawn. The world seemed suspended between night and day. Between silence and movement, between what had been and what was about to begin. Harita rose calmly. The dew-covered grass sparkled beneath his hooves. A gentle breeze carried the scent of earth and flowering trees. Today, he thought, many lives may change. Yet his heart remained peaceful. Not because success was guaranteed, because he had already chosen the path he believed was right. And once a person, or a deer, has done that, the outcome becomes less important than the intention. As the eastern sky brightened, Harita began walking toward the city gates. The guards noticed him immediately. At first, they assumed they were seeing an ordinary deer. Then the morning light touched his golden fur. Everything changed. The guards stared in disbelief. His body seemed to glow. His silver antlers reflected the dawn like polished moonlight. His eyes shone with remarkable intelligence and serenity. One guard rubbed his eyes. Another whispered a prayer. Neither had ever witnessed such a creature. The golden deer king approached calmly. Without fear. Without hesitation. The guards instinctively stepped aside. Not because they were ordered to, because something within them recognized his dignity. Harita entered the city. The streets gradually came alive around him. Merchants opened their shops. Workers began their daily tasks. Children ran through narrow alleys. People carrying baskets and bundles suddenly stopped. Their conversations ceased. One by one, heads turned. The city had never seen anything like this. A magnificent golden deer walking openly through the streets. Not fleeing. Not hiding. Walking with quiet purpose. Some followed at a distance. Others watched from windows. Word spread rapidly. The golden deer, a sacred animal. A miracle. Look! Crowds began gathering behind him. Yet Harita remained focused. His destination lay ahead. The royal palace. As the sun rose higher, he reached the palace gates. Towering walls stood before him. Marble columns stretched toward the sky. Royal banners fluttered above the entrance. Soldiers guarded every approach. The palace represented earthly power in its grandest form. Wealth. Authority. Control. Yet Harita felt neither awe nor fear. For he understood something many humans forget. Power over others is not the highest form of power. Mastery over one's own heart is far greater. The soldiers noticed him immediately. Confusion swept through the gatehouse. Officers rushed forward. Servants gathered. Within moments, dozens of people surrounded the entrance. No one knew what to do. The golden deer king simply continued walking. Until he reached the center of the palace courtyard. There, before the gates of the royal hall, he stopped. The crowd watched in silence. Then Harita slowly lowered himself and knelt. A collective gasp spread through the courtyard. The image was unforgettable. A golden deer, majestic and noble, kneeling peacefully before a human king he had never met. Not in submission, not in fear, but in humility and in compassion. Messengers immediately rushed inside. The palace erupted into excitement. Ministers abandoned their discussions. Servants ran through corridors. Officials hurried toward the throne room. Within minutes, the news reached the king himself. The king of Benares frowned. A golden deer? The messenger bowed deeply. Yes, your majesty. The king set aside the documents before him. A deer has entered my palace? Yes, your majesty. And it kneels in the courtyard? The messenger nodded. The king rose from his throne. Curiosity quickly replaced annoyance. Such a thing had never happened before. Surrounded by ministers and guards, he made his way toward the courtyard. The crowd parted as he approached. Then he saw Harita. And for a moment, the king forgot how to speak. The deer before him was unlike any creature he had ever encountered. Its golden fur shimmered in the sunlight. Its silver antlers appeared almost celestial. Its eyes reflected extraordinary calm. There was no panic, no hostility, no fear, only dignity, only wisdom, only peace. The king felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Respect. For several moments, neither spoke. The courtyard remained completely silent. Even the birds seemed to pause. Then Harita lifted his head and met the king's gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, clear, like water flowing through a mountain stream. Great king. The crowd gasped again. Many stumbled backward in shock. A talking deer. Several ministers looked at one another in disbelief. Others whispered prayers. The king himself stood motionless. Yet Harita continued calmly. I have come from the northern mountains. His voice carried through the courtyard. I am Harita, guardian of the deer who live there. The king listened carefully. The golden deer king lowered his head respectfully. I come not for myself. The king felt an unexpected heaviness in his chest. Harita continued. I come for those who suffer. Silence deepened. The words seemed to settle over everyone present. Not a demand. Not an accusation. Simply truth. The golden deer king spoke of the hunts. Of the panic spreading through the forests. Of mothers separated from their young. Of animals injured while fleeing. Of fear becoming a constant companion to innocent creatures. He described these things without anger, without bitterness, without blame, That surprised the king most of all. Many who sought favors spoke with desperation. Many who protested spoke with hostility. Yet this deer spoke only with compassion. Even while describing suffering. When Harita finished, the courtyard remained silent. The king lowered his gaze. For the first time in many years, he imagined the hunt from another perspective. Not as excitement. Not as entertainment. But as terror. The realization unsettled him. At length, he spoke. "What would you have me do?" Harita looked directly into his eyes. The moment had come. The reason for his journey. The purpose behind every step he had taken. The golden deer king spoke softly. Yet every person in the courtyard heard his words. "Great king." He paused. "If you cannot abandon venison entirely." The king listened. Then stopped the great hunts. The courtyard remained silent. Harita continued. "There is another way." The king leaned forward slightly. The ministers exchanged curious glances, and then the golden deer king made an offer so extraordinary that no one present would ever forget it. An offer born from compassion. An offer born from responsibility. An offer that would change the fate of an entire kingdom. Each day, Harita said quietly, "I will send one deer from my herd to your palace." Shock rippled through the crowd. The king stared at him. The golden deer king remained calm. No more hunts. No more terror. No more suffering spread across the forests. His eyes reflected unwavering resolve. One deer each day. The king struggled to comprehend what he was hearing. Harita lowered his head. "And if this agreement is accepted, my people will no longer need to die in fear." The courtyard fell silent once again. Even the wind seemed to stop. The king looked at the golden deer before him. A creature willing to sacrifice his own people, not out of cruelty, but to spare them from greater suffering. A ruler willing to carry the burden of impossible choices. A leader who thought first of others. And for the first time in many years, the king of Benares felt ashamed, for standing before him was not merely a deer. It was a king. And perhaps, a far better king than himself. For a long time, the courtyard remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The morning sunlight illuminated the marble floors of the palace. A gentle breeze stirred the royal banners overhead. Yet all attention remained fixed upon the golden deer king, and upon the choice he had offered. The king of Benares stood motionless. The words echoed within him. One deer each day. No more hunts. No more terrified animals fleeing through forests. No more villages disrupted. No more endless pursuits. The proposal seemed impossible. And yet, strangely, it also seemed reasonable. The king looked carefully at Harita. The golden deer king had not come seeking favors. He had not begged for mercy. He had not threatened resistance. Instead, he had offered sacrifice, responsibility, compassion, the very qualities a ruler should possess. The realization pierced the king's heart. At last, he spoke. If I accept this agreement. His voice was quieter now. The hunts will end. A murmur spread through the gathered crowd. Harita lowered his head respectfully. The king continued. I give my word. The golden deer king's eyes softened. The king raised his hand. From this day forward, no hunting party shall enter your forests. The ministers exchanged surprised glances. Some were relieved. Others uncertain. But none objected. For even they could see the extraordinary dignity of the being before them. The agreement was made. A single promise. A single decision. And yet its effects would ripple outward through countless lives. The golden deer king bowed deeply. Thank you, great king. His voice carried genuine gratitude. Not because the arrangement was perfect. Because suffering had been reduced. Sometimes compassion cannot immediately eliminate pain. Sometimes it can only lessen it. Yet even that matters. Even that saves lives. The king of Benares watched as Harita turned to leave. Something within him felt strangely unsettled. The golden deer had achieved his goal. Yet there was no triumph in his expression. No satisfaction. Only quiet acceptance. The king suddenly understood why. Because Harita had not escaped suffering. He had merely chosen the smallest suffering among many terrible options. And such choices often weigh heavily upon compassionate hearts. The journey back to the mountains took several days. When Harita finally returned, thousands of deer rushed to greet him. Relief spread through the valleys. The hunters would no longer come. The endless panic would end. The forests would know peace again. Tears filled many eyes. Gratitude echoed throughout the herds. Yet Harita's heart remained thoughtful. That evening, beneath the stars, he gathered the deer together. The moon shone brightly above the valley. Silver light covered the grasslands. The streams reflected countless stars. The beauty of the night contrasted sharply with the difficult message he carried. The deer listened quietly as Harita explained the agreement. At first, joy filled the gathering. Then understanding arrived. One deer each day. A life would still be lost. Every day. The celebration faded into silence. The reality settled upon them. Fear returned. Not wild panic as before, but a quieter fear. A personal fear. Because now each deer understood something. One day, their turn might come. The valley remained silent. No one wished to speak. No one wished to ask the obvious question, who would be chosen? Eventually, Harita answered without being asked. We will take turns. The deer looked toward him. No favorites. No exceptions. No special treatment. The golden deer king's voice remained calm. Each life has equal value. The words carry tremendous weight. For many rulers protect the powerful. Many rulers favor their friends. Many rulers shield themselves from sacrifice. But Harita refused such thinking. The old, the young, the strong, the weak, every life mattered equally, including his own. A sense of solemn respect spread through the gathering. Though sadness remained, trust remained as well. Because the deer knew their king. He would never ask of them what he would not ask of himself. And so the agreement began. The first deer volunteered. A young stag. Healthy and strong. At dawn he walked alone toward the city. The herd watched silently as he disappeared among the trees. Many wept. Many prayed. Harita stood quietly among them, sharing their grief. That evening the stag did not return. The next day, another deer made the journey. Then another. And another. Days became weeks. Weeks slowly became months. The arrangement continued. Each morning, one deer departed. Each evening, one absence remained. The forests were peaceful once more. The hunters no longer came. The drums had fallen silent. No terrified stampede swept through the valleys. No fawns were separated from their mothers. No wounded animals lay abandoned in the wilderness. Yet peace carried a cost. And every deer understood it. Harita understood it most of all. Each departure weighed upon his heart. He remembered every face, every name, every family left behind. Many nights he walked alone beneath the stars, reflecting. praying, seeking wisdom. The burden of leadership had never felt heavier. Yet he never allowed despair to take root. Because leadership is not the absence of pain. Leadership is the willingness to carry pain on behalf of others. The Golden Deer King accepted this truth completely. One evening, nearly a year after the agreement began, Harita stood beside a quiet stream. The water reflected the moonlight. The forest slept peacefully around him. The valley had largely healed. Young fawns played once more. Families felt safe again. Life continued. And yet Harita often wondered whether a better path might someday appear. A path requiring no sacrifice at all. A path where compassion could extend even further. Perhaps, he thought, hearts can change. Perhaps even kings can change. The thought lingered with him. Like a distant star barely visible in the night sky. A possibility. A hope. The stream continued flowing gently. The moon climbed higher. The valley rested peacefully. And far away, in the palace of Benares, the human king occasionally found himself thinking about the extraordinary deer who had knelt before him. The memory refused to fade. The dignity, the wisdom, the compassion, something had been planted within his heart. Something quiet. Something growing. Neither king yet understood where that seed would lead. But destiny was already preparing the next chapter. A chapter that would test compassion more deeply than ever before. A chapter involving a mother. An unborn child. And a sacrifice that would transform not only a kingdom, but a human soul. Another season arrived in the valleys beneath the snow mountains. Spring slowly unfolded across the forests. Wildflowers bloomed beside the streams. Fresh grass covered the hillsides. Birdsong filled the morning air. Life continued its gentle rhythm. The agreement between the deer and the king remained unchanged. Each dawn, one deer departed. Each evening, one place in the herd remained empty. The sacrifice had become part of life, not accepted without sadness, but accepted with dignity. For many months, the forests knew peace. The young grew stronger. The old lived without fear of hunting drums. Families remained together. And yet every deer knew that someday, their turn might come. Among the vast herd lived a young doe. She was gentle and kind, soft-eyed and quiet. Unlike many others, she carried two lives within her body. For she was expecting a fawn. Each day, she felt the small movements of her unborn child. Tiny signs of life. Tiny reminders of hope. When she rested beside the streams, she imagined the future. She imagined teaching her fawn where to find sweet grass. She imagined watching it run beneath the trees. She imagined standing beside it beneath the moonlight. Like every mother, she dreamed of protecting the life entrusted to her. The days passed peacefully. Then one morning, everything changed. The names were being reviewed. The order carefully maintained. No favoritism. No exceptions. The agreement required fairness. When the doe heard her name, the world seemed to stop. For several moments she could not breathe. She lowered her head. The valley around her suddenly felt distant. The sounds of birds faded. The wind became silent. Only one thought remained. My child. Not herself, not her own life. Her child. The tiny being who had never seen sunlight. Who had never walked through grass. Who had never tasted mountain water. Who had never known the beauty of the world. The doe spent the day alone, wandering quietly through the forest. Tears filled her eyes. Again and again she placed her head against her belly, feeling the gentle movements within, feeling the life that depended entirely upon her. As evening approached, despair overwhelmed her. At last, she made a decision. There was one being she trusted completely. One being whose heart understood suffering. One being whose compassion seemed limitless. The golden deer king. The sun was setting when she found him. Harita stood beside a quiet stream. The water reflected the colors of the evening sky. Gold, amber, crimson. The valley seemed peaceful. Yet the moment he saw her face, he understood something was wrong. The doe approached slowly. Her body trembled. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. Harita turned toward her gently. "My friend." His voice was soft. "What troubles your heart?" The question broke the final barrier holding back her grief. Tears flowed freely. For several moments she could not speak. The golden deer king waited patiently. Compassion never rushes pain. Eventually, the words emerged. "My king." Her voice shook. "Tomorrow, it is my turn." Silence settled between them. Harita understood immediately. The doe lowered her head. "My death does not frighten me." The word surprised him. She continued, "If I must die, I will go." The stream continued flowing quietly nearby. The evening breeze moved gently through the trees. "But my child." Her voice broke. "My child has done nothing." Tears fell onto the grass. "He has never harmed anyone. He has never even been born." The pain within her words seemed to fill the valley itself. Harita listened. Without interrupting. Without judgment. Only listening. The doe placed her head against her belly. A gesture so simple, yet filled with immeasurable love. "Please." Her voice became barely a whisper. "Allow me a little time." The fading sunlight illuminated the tears upon her face. "Let me give birth. Let my child see the world. Afterward, I will go willingly." She raised her eyes toward the golden deer king. "I promise." The silence that followed felt endless. The stream flowed. The wind whispered. The mountains watched. Harita closed his eyes. Within his heart, compassion and responsibility met. The agreement had been built upon fairness. No exceptions. Every deer equal. Every life valued the same. That principle had protected the herd. Yet now another truth stood before him. An unborn life. A child who had never been given a chance. The golden deer king felt the weight of the decision. Not because he doubted compassion. Because true compassion sometimes requires wisdom, and wisdom often asks difficult questions. For several moments, Harita remained silent. The doe waited. Hope and despair mingling within her heart. Finally, the golden deer king opened his eyes. What she saw there was not uncertainty, not hesitation, only kindness, only understanding. The kind of understanding that emerges when one being fully recognizes the suffering of another. A gentle smile touched his face. "My friend." The doe listened. "You should return home." She blinked. Confused. Harita continued softly. You should rest. The evening light continued fading around them. You should prepare for your child. The doe stared at him, unable to understand. Then the golden deer king spoke the words that would forever change the course of the story. Tomorrow. He paused. I will go in your place. The world seemed to stop. The doe could barely breathe. My king. Her voice trembled. No. But Harita simply smiled. You carry two lives. The first stars began appearing overhead. I carry only one. Tears streamed down the doe's face. You cannot. Harita looked toward the darkening sky. Every star seemed to shine a little brighter. Every sound seemed gentler. Compassion means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. His voice remained calm. The words carried no sense of sacrifice, no sense of heroism, only truth, the deepest truth of his life. The doe collapsed to her knees, overcome with gratitude, overcome with grief, overcome with love. The golden deer king lowered his head and gently touched hers. A simple gesture. A blessing. A farewell. That night, the valley slept beneath countless stars. Most of the herd knew nothing of what had happened. The streams continued their songs. The wind moved softly through the forests. The moon climbed silently across the heavens. And alone beneath the ancient sky, Harita gazed toward the distant city of Benares. Tomorrow he would walk there once again. Not as a messenger. Not as a negotiator. Not as a king seeking an agreement. Tomorrow he would walk there as an offering. A life freely given. A sacrifice made out of compassion. And though death awaited at the end of the road, fear never entered his heart. For when compassion becomes complete, concern for oneself grows small. Concern for others becomes everything. The stars shone brightly above the mountains. The unborn fawn slept safely within its mother. And the golden deer king quietly prepared for the greatest act of love his kingdom would ever witness. The night passed quietly. Moonlight drifted across the sleeping valleys. The streams continued their endless journey through the mountains. The forests rested beneath a blanket of stars. Most of the deer slept peacefully, unaware of what the coming dawn would bring. Only a few remained awake. The mother doe, the golden deer king, and perhaps the mountains themselves. For some moments in life seem so important that even the earth appears to pause and watch. The mother doe lay beneath a cedar tree. Tears occasionally slipped from her eyes. Yet beneath her sorrow, another feeling had emerged: wonder. She could not understand how one heart could hold so much compassion. Again and again, she thought of Harita's words. "You carry two lives." Simple words. Yet they contained a universe of kindness. Within her womb, the unborn fawn rested peacefully, protected by a sacrifice it would never remember, protected by a king it would never truly know. The thought filled her heart with both gratitude and grief. Far away, upon a ridge overlooking the valley, Harita watched the stars. The cold mountain air moved gently around him. The familiar landscape stretched before his eyes, the forests he had guarded, the streams he had crossed countless times, the valleys where generations of deer had lived and died. Everything seemed especially beautiful, not because it had changed, because he was seeing it with complete awareness. Every tree, every sound, every breath. Sometimes, when we know a moment may be our last, we finally see it clearly. Harita felt no bitterness, no regret, no anger, only gratitude. Gratitude for the life he had lived. Gratitude for the beings he had protected. Gratitude for the opportunity to serve others. The stars slowly faded. The horizon brightened. A new day began. The day of sacrifice. As dawn spread across the mountains, Harita descended into the valley one final time. The deer were beginning to awaken. Many greeted him as they always had, with affection, with respect, with trust. None knew where he was going. None knew what he intended. The golden deer king smiled gently at each of them. A silent blessing. A silent farewell. Eventually, he reached the edge of the forest. There he paused. The rising sun illuminated the mountains behind him. Golden light touched his fur. For a brief moment, he seemed almost made of light itself. Then he turned and began walking toward Benares. The journey felt different this time. The roads were familiar. The rivers familiar. The villages familiar. Yet everything carried a deeper stillness. The world seemed extraordinarily peaceful. Birds sang. Children laughed in distant fields. Farmers worked beneath the morning sun. Life continued everywhere. Ordinary, beautiful, fragile. Harita observed it all with quiet appreciation. The closer he came to the city, the more people noticed him. Many recognized the extraordinary deer. Word spread quickly. The golden deer king has returned. People gathered along the roads. Some bowed respectfully. Others simply stared. Yet Harita continued onward. Calm. Focused. Peaceful. By midday, he reached the palace. The guards immediately recognized him. Surprise flashed across their faces. The golden deer king had returned much sooner than expected. And this time, he came alone. No message preceded him. No explanation accompanied him. Without hesitation, Harita entered the palace courtyard. The same courtyard where he had once negotiated peace. The same courtyard where he had stood as a protector. Today he stood as something else. An offering. The servants noticed him first. Then the guards. Then the palace staff. Confusion spread rapidly. Yet Harita ignored the growing commotion. He walked calmly toward the place where animals were normally prepared for slaughter. There he stopped. For a moment, complete silence settled over the courtyard. Then, with remarkable serenity, the golden deer king lowered himself. He stretched out his neck. And waited. The gesture was unmistakable. He had come to die. Shock swept through everyone present. Several servants dropped what they were carrying. The royal butcher froze. The guards stared in disbelief. No one moved. No one understood. The palace erupted into confusion. Messengers ran toward the royal chambers. Officials hurried through corridors. Within moments, the news reached the king. The king of Benares immediately rose from his throne. His heart began pounding. Something felt terribly wrong. Without delay, he hurried toward the courtyard. Ministers followed behind him. The crowd parted as he arrived. Then he saw Harita. The golden deer king lay peacefully upon the ground, his neck extended, his eyes calm, his expression serene. The king felt a chill move through his body. "What is this?" His voice echoed across the courtyard. No one answered. Because no one knew. The king stepped forward. Harita. The golden deer king slowly lifted his head. Their eyes met. Immediately the king noticed something unusual. There was no fear. No desperation. No request for help. Only peace. A peace deeper than he had ever seen in another living being. The king approached closer. "Why are you here?" The courtyard remained silent. Everyone listened. Harita spoke gently. "Today, a deer was expected." The king nodded. "Yes." Harita lowered his gaze. "It was a mother." The king frowned slightly. The golden deer king continued. "She carries a child within her." The king remained silent. The courtyard remained silent. The world itself seemed silent. Harita explained everything. The mother's plea. Her unborn fawn. Her promise to come later. Her tears. Her fear. Her love. Every word emerged calmly. Without exaggeration. Without accusation. Simply truth. The king listened. At first, he felt sympathy. Then sadness. Then something deeper. Something painful. Because as Harita spoke, the king began imagining the scene. A mother begging for her unborn child. A creature willing to sacrifice itself for another. A king willing to die for one of his subjects. The contrast became impossible to ignore. Harita finished his story. Then he spoke the words that pierced the king's heart completely. "Great king." His voice remained gentle. "The child has not yet seen the sun." The king lowered his eyes. "The child has harmed no one." Silence. "If a life must be taken today." Harita's eyes reflected infinite compassion. "Let it be mine." The words settled over the courtyard like sacred scripture. Many present began weeping openly. Even hardened soldiers felt their eyes grow moist. The royal butcher lowered his head. Unable to look directly at the golden deer king. The king himself felt tears gathering. Something inside him was breaking. Not weakness. Not pride. Ignorance. For years he had hunted without reflection. Killed without understanding. Taken life without appreciating its value. Yet a deer had shown him what true nobility looked like. A deer had shown him what true leadership meant. A deer had shown him what compassion actually was. The realization overwhelmed him. Suddenly, the king stepped forward. Then, before the astonished eyes of everyone present, he fell to his knees. The ruler of Benares, Lord of armies, Master of vast lands, kneeling before a deer. Tears streamed down his face. His voice trembled. "Harita." For several moments he could not continue. Emotion closed his throat. Finally, he spoke. "I am ashamed." The courtyard remained silent. The king bowed his head deeply. A king should protect life. His tears fell onto the marble floor. but I have caused suffering." The golden deer king watched quietly. Not with judgment. Only compassion. The king looked up. His eyes filled with remorse. And in that moment, something extraordinary happened. The heart of a ruler changed. Not because he was forced. Not because he was defeated. But because compassion had finally reached him. The seed planted during their first meeting had blossomed. And now, standing at the edge of sacrifice, the golden deer king was about to witness a transformation greater than any victory achieved through force. For the greatest power in the world is not fear. It is a compassionate heart awakening to truth. For a long time, no one spoke. The palace courtyard remained utterly silent. The ministers stood motionless. The guards lowered their eyes. Even the wind seemed reluctant to disturb the moment. The king of Benares remained kneeling before the golden deer king. Tears continued to flow down his face. Yet they were not tears of weakness. They were tears of awakening. For the first time in many years, he saw clearly. Not through the eyes of a ruler. Not through the eyes of a hunter. But through the eyes of a living being. A being capable of compassion. A being capable of understanding suffering. A being capable of change. The king slowly rose to his feet. His voice remained unsteady. Yet there was a new strength within it. A different strength. The strength that emerges when pride finally gives way to wisdom. He looked at Harita, the magnificent golden deer king who had traveled from the mountains not once, but twice. the king who had risked everything for others, the king who had asked for nothing for himself, the king who had come willingly to die so that another life might continue. The human king lowered his head once more. Then he spoke. No, the single word echoed through the courtyard. Harita remained silent. The king's voice grew stronger. No life will be taken today. A murmur spread through the crowd. The king continued. Not the mother. Not her child. And not you. The golden deer king's eyes softened. Yet the king was not finished. For something profound had changed within him. Years of habit. Years of ignorance. Years of cruelty disguised as entertainment. All were collapsing before a truth too powerful to deny. The king turned toward his ministers, toward his soldiers, toward every witness gathered in the courtyard. And with a voice that carried across the palace grounds, he issued a decree. From this day forward. He paused. The silence deepened. All hunting within my kingdom shall cease. The crowd gasped. The ministers stared at one another. Several seemed unable to believe what they had heard. The king continued. No hunter shall pursue the deer of the mountains. No hunter shall enter their valleys. No hunter shall disturb their forests. The words flowed with increasing certainty, as though they had waited many years to be spoken. Then the king turned back toward Harita. His eyes shone with gratitude. Yet one final realization emerged within his heart. Why stop with deer? Why limit compassion? If suffering matters, then it matters everywhere. If life is precious, then all life is precious. The king raised his hand once more. Hear my command. The courtyard became silent again. Not only the deer. His voice echoed against the palace walls. All creatures within my kingdom shall be protected. Birds, animals, living beings of every kind. No unnecessary killing. No pointless cruelty. No suffering inflicted for pleasure. The decree spread through the crowd like a wave. Many wept openly. Some smiled. Others stood stunned. For they knew they were witnessing history. Not a military victory. Not a political triumph. Something far rarer. The transformation of a human heart. The golden deer king listened quietly. No pride appeared upon his face. No sense of accomplishment. Only peace. Because true compassion does not seek recognition. It seeks relief from suffering. And suffering had finally begun to diminish. The king stepped forward. Then, before everyone present, he bowed deeply to Harita. Not to a deer, to wisdom, to compassion. to truth. The palace remained silent. And within that silence, a new relationship was born. Not ruler and animal. Not hunter and prey. But one living being recognizing another. The golden deer king gently inclined his head. A gesture of acceptance. A gesture of forgiveness. A gesture of blessing. The matter was finished. The sacrifice would not be required. The mother doe would live. Her child would be born. The forests would know peace. The agreement of death had ended. The era of protection had begun. Several days later, Harita returned to the mountains. The journey home felt lighter. The rivers seemed brighter. The forests seemed more alive. The wind carried a sweetness he had not noticed before. Perhaps because hope itself changes how the world appears. When the deer saw their king returning, joy swept through the valleys. Thousands gathered. Mothers cried with relief. Fawns ran through the grass. Old deer bowed their heads in gratitude. The mother doe wept openly when she learned what had happened. Again and again she thanked Harita. Again and again he responded with the same gentle smile, for compassion never keeps a record of its kindness. Weeks later, the mother gave birth. A healthy fawn entered the world. Its first breath carried the scent of mountain air. Its first sight was the beauty of the valleys. Its first steps touched grass that had been protected by sacrifice. Protected by courage. Protected by compassion. Years passed. The forests flourished. The herds multiplied. Peace returned fully to the mountains. And the story of the golden deer king spread throughout the land. People told it beside fires. Monks told it in temples. Parents told it to their children. A story of a king who ruled through compassion rather than fear. A story of sacrifice that transformed a kingdom. A story proving that even the hardest heart can awaken. And many years later, in another lifetime, the Blessed One sat among his disciples. The evening was quiet. The monks listened carefully as the Buddha completed the tale. Then he revealed its deeper truth. The golden deer king was myself. The disciples bowed respectfully, for they understood. The compassion that had guided the deer king was the same compassion that now guided the Buddha. A compassion extending to all beings, without exception, without boundary, without end. The Buddha then explained that those who suffer often become harsh. Those who are lost often create suffering for others. Yet compassion remains the most powerful response. Not because it defeats others, because it transforms them. Sometimes slowly, sometimes invisibly, but transform them it does. And now, dear friend, as this story gently comes to its end, allow yourself to reflect for a moment. How many struggles in life arise from fear? How many conflicts arise because we forget that others suffer just as we do? How often do we search for happiness while unknowingly causing pain? The Golden Deer King offers no condemnation, only an invitation. An invitation to see more clearly, to love more deeply, to act more compassionately. Not because the world demands it, but because compassion is the path to peace. The mountains remain. The rivers continue flowing. The stars continue their silent journey across the heavens. Generations come and go. Kings rise and fall. Yet kindness endures. Like moonlight upon still water. Like a gentle breeze through ancient forests. Like the quiet voice of wisdom speaking softly within the heart. And so, beneath the eternal stars, the story fades into silence. The Golden Deer King returns to the forest. The king returns to his kingdom. The fawn grows strong. The mountains sleep peacefully. And perhaps, as you drift toward rest, you may carry one small lesson with you into the night. A single act of compassion can change a life. A great act of compassion can change a kingdom. And a heart awakened by compassion can change the world. Good night.